Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. It's our custom to go around and introduce ourselves. And you can introduce yourself by your first name or your first and last name. And I know for myself, it takes a few seconds for me to really let in someone's name. So I'd like to make a suggestion that we try to do this mindfully and slowly. And a suggestion would be to take a breath and say, my name is, and then say your name. So I'll start. My name is Ray Dyer.
My name is Andre.
My name is Reggie.
My name is Manuel.
I'm Leonard.
My name is Barack.
My name is Freddie.
My name is Kei Matsuda.
My name is Mike.
My name is Barry.
My name is Ricardo.
I'm George.
My name is Michael.
My name is Lies.
My name is Harley.
My name is Ding Hao.
My name is Philip.
My name is Tony.
My name is Joe Good.
My name is Brad.
My name is Howard Newport.
My name is Daniel.
They are.
My name is Bob.
My name is Peter.
Richard.
My name is Jeffrey.
Tim Stewart. I'm Jack.
My name is Tage William.
My name is Michael.
My name is Jerry Jones.
My name is John.
Peter.
My name is Don.
My name is Clint.
My name is David.
I'm Chica.
Anyone?
My name is Rich.
My name is Garth.
So our speaker today is Garth Gilchrist. Garth has spent his life drawing people close to nature through wilderness adventures, teaching deep nature awareness and sharing his remarkable gift of storytelling about wild places and wild landscapes of the heart and soul, helping thousands of people draw on their connection with the great life that flows through everything. Expect an adventure into your own inner landscapes and story, and a glimpse of life that may surprise and move you. I turn it over to Garth.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to talk about this, but this namaste, as we say in the Indian tradition, I don't know what the Buddhist word for this is, but the namaste is translated in Sanskrit as the eternal in me bows to the eternal in you. So it's a recognition of that which is permanent, that which is essential, that which is that does not pass away, that we see in everyone and everything around us, which really is the core, the essence of enlightenment, of waking up, is to be able to see that essential quality in all things. So I'm going to start with, first I'd like to start with thanking you for being here. It's wonderful to be with you. This is a poem of mine that kind of encapsulates the whole theme of the morning. To love the world. You know you love the world when the scent of pine pitch makes you cry, when the sound of grass and the wind is as good as heaven, when stream water feels like a lover's touch, and going indoors is hard to bear. You know you love the world when a hillside of cypresses in the wind sounds like God laughing, when the waves breaking rhythmically upon the shore is your own heartbeat in your own chest. When a swift, streaking overhead, suddenly carries you into open space, and granite in your hand silently teaches you the most ancient of religions. So this morning I'd really like to talk about this tremendous power of nature to draw us into the experience of waking up, and the experience of being able to see and feel deeply this essential quality of life, which is the whole point of life. I mean, human beings go through endless efforts to find happiness in all kinds of ways, and happiness is so essential. It's simply being able to feel and see this glorious presence that's within us and all around us. But I'm used to teaching outdoors, used to having nature to draw on and be able to use that direct experience of nature to awaken, help people to feel. It's such a natural thing, it happens very easily. But here we are indoors within four walls. So I have to rely on another power that's almost as magical, almost as intense, almost as miraculous, and that's the power of words, the power of language, poetry, story. So I'll be relying a great deal on the landscapes that already exist within all of you. One element of my talk this morning will be on inner landscapes, how when we experience a place in a deep way, when we're delighted by it or moved by it, when its beauty in whatever manner somehow comes into our experience, that landscape then dwells within us and we can access it in the future. So I'll be doing that, sparking you through language and words. And the talk this morning has a couple of purposes. One is to, as I say, awaken that memory that already is within you, which a lot of you walk around in a state of enjoying nature and feeling your connection already. I don't presume to be doing anything radically new, but I hope to energize that or take it perhaps a little bit deeper. And then I want to also draw your attention to the fact that nature is so much available to us, even in a cityscape. You can feel a lot of inspiration and a lot of teaching, a lot of wisdom can come, and also life, encouragement, peace, harmony, strength can come through a simple tree. And it doesn't have to be through a sequoia tree. You don't have to go to Muir Woods and see a grand, magnificent. It can be through a simple willow that's growing in your backyard, or a cedar that you pass when you hear the wind. You can draw a tremendous amount of strength that way. So I will be using, as I said, poems, some stories, some more formal stories that I tell in performance, one longer one and one much shorter one, and then an autobiographical thread, which I got from listening to Barry a couple of weeks ago. I thought that was a wonderful device for organizing the talk. People always are interested in other people's stories. So my story starts out in my adolescence when I made three great discoveries. One was that I was suddenly and inordinately and excessively attracted to other boys, which had enormous delights and grave pains and consequences. The second discovery was that I was fascinated with God and with spirit. I grew up in a Christian tradition, and then I quickly became, in my adolescence, interested in meditation, and particularly in the Hindu tradition. I had some mentors that were in that line. So the idea of God was something that fascinated me. The third discovery that I made in my early adolescence was that I felt closer to that quality of God or spirit or the essential life of things when I was in nature. That somehow the presence of natural things, of being beside a river or being up in a tree — I used to climb trees all the time — somehow being close to nature, I felt that presence more deeply than I did at any other time. So I'd like to, at this point, tell you a story. So just enjoy the story. I was 6 when I fell in love with trees. Our family had just bought a brick house on the slopes of the Sammamish River Valley east of Seattle. And Dad and I walked around our new property looking up. Look at that one, Dad. It looks like a huge teepee. Ah, that's a western red cedar, son. You should smell the wood, sweet and fragrant. Look at that one, Dad. The limbs, they're like arms. Ah, that's a mountain hemlock, son. You should see it in the wind, graceful as a dancer. Look at that one, Dad. Up on the hillside, at the top of the hill, grew a huge Douglas fir. It was a survivor of the ancient forests. The furrows in its bark flowed like canyons, upward, all the way to the highest branches, which waved in the wind about 300 feet above the rooftop of our house. Dad and I walked up to the tree. We held hands. We tried to make a circle around it, but we only got a little more than halfway. About 3 weeks later, at dinner time, Dad said, "You know, I've been driving all around our neighborhood here. I've been driving all around the north end of the lake. I've been all over, and I haven't seen a single tree that's as big as the one in our backyard. You know, I think I'm going to try and climb that tree." "Alan," my mom said, "you've got a family. You're going to break your neck." Dad carried the double-length extension ladder up into the backyard, put it up against the tree. Mom kept saying, "Alan, you're going to break your neck." Standing on the top rung of the ladder and reaching up, he still couldn't quite make it to the lowest broken-off branch stop. "Thank heavens," said Mom. "Thank heavens." Dad climbed down. As his feet touched the ground, he looked down at me and winked. "Maybe you can climb up there someday, Garth. If you do, you'll see the whole world for both of us." I looked up at Dad, and beyond him, up at the tree which stretched into the blue northern sky, more of a god than a tree. And the idea of me climbing it was impossible, but wonderful. And I vowed to myself right then, I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but someday I was going to climb that tree. So I started right into practice. First, climbing up smaller and then larger trees. In the afternoon, about dusk, about dinner time, Mom would always come out the back door. She'd have a brass bell in her hand with a wooden handle that she'd brought from Illinois. It was an old school bell. And she'd ring it. It was loud. You could hear it all over the neighborhood. It was sure to bring us to dinner. And then she'd put it down on the concrete. She'd cup her hands around her mouth and she'd holler, "Garth, Galen," that was my brother, "dinner time." And many afternoons, I'd call down from one tree or another, "I'm up here, Mom." And she'd look up and she'd scan the backyard. And then she'd catch sight of me and say, "Good Lord, dinner's almost on the table, Garth. Climb down, but don't hurry. Be careful." "I will, Mom, don't worry." And I'd come into dinner with all kinds of stories about squirrels and birds and the different shapes of the different limbs of the different kinds of trees. And Dad would say, "That's right. The higher you climb, the more you'll see. And the more you see, the wiser you'll be." "Alan," said Mom, "don't encourage it. He's already more squirrel than boy. And what happens if he falls?" "No, he won't fall," said Dad. "He's a good climber." I think Dad appreciated the value of tree climbing. Not just the boyish adventure and fun and challenge of it, but the value that was to be gained in trees. The perspective that could be seen of the world. So I kept on climbing. One day I climbed out my bedroom window, scampered across the garage roof, and got up into the big western hemlock tree that grew on the corner there. And I climbed up, and that was the biggest tree that I'd been in yet. The branches didn't come anywhere close to the ground. That's why I had to get on the garage roof. And I climbed up, and 100 feet up, I looked down on the house, and it looked small. The house looked small. And then I could look down on the garden, and there were Mr. and Mr. Fluharty, our neighbors, picking beans. And over there were Mr. and Mrs. Simpson having dinner on their back porch, and there was mean old Mr. Reed shooing a dog away. I came down and I told Dad about it. He said, "Yep, I told you. The higher you climb, the more you'll see. And the more you see, the wiser you'll be." So I kept on climbing. Sometimes in the wintertime, big storms would blow in. And the trees would wave back and forth. One night I remember waking up and hearing the roaring sound outside, and I went to my window and I opened it up, and the rain came in, and also came in that wonderful resiny smell of broken branches and pine needles filling the air, fir needles. And I saw the big tree, just a silhouette, waving back and forth across the sky. I ran across the living room, down the back stairs. Usually Mom and Dad would wake up if they heard my feet, but there was so much roaring. The whole house was filled with the roaring of the storm. And I went back down the back stairs, out on the porch, flipped on the back light, climbed up on the garbage can, and turned the floodlight of the backyard up so that it illuminated all the trees. It was like a huge dance. And there, the big tree, like the mast of a great ship, sweeping back and forth across the sky. I'd never experienced power as I did that night. But I was afraid for the tree. I went back to bed and I prayed that the tree wouldn't break. And in the morning, it was still there. It had lived through 500 years of storms before I was even born. So it probably didn't need my prayers. In the morning, I would find sprigs of the great tree from the high branches blown down. They were different than the lower branches, the needles tightly packed, sometimes a resiny cone in amongst them. I would take it to school with me, bring it out during math class and smell and all the magic and mystery of the night. And the storm would come back to me, and the presence of the great trees somehow come inside of me with that smell. This was sacred, the hands and fingers of the great tree. When Grandma came to visit, I always got to sleep with her up in the little house, our guest house. And outside the little house window were the big trunks of 2 cedar trees. We called them the cedar twins. And looking out the window, they looked like the legs of a giant that stood over us, protecting and guarding us through the night. Grandma would tell me stories, she'd sing songs, and then she'd fall asleep, and I would be snuggled up against her soft body and her brown, long hair, hearing her breathing and the breathing of the cedar twins outside the window, the rustling, the wash, that soft, whooshing sound of the air passing through the cedar fronds. And it was the most peaceful sound I'd ever heard. And it seemed to say, all is well in the world. When I was 13, a little older, I built a treehouse, which in Seattle is not an easy thing because there are no oak trees or madrone trees with big spreading limbs. All the trees go straight up. So I had to hang my treehouse. We hauled it up with the use of ropes and pulleys, my friends and my brother, and we hauled it up 60 feet between the cedar twins and hung it up there and tied it off so it was stable. And I spent hours up there just looking out at the world, doing my studies, reading books, and thinking about Ozzie Hazard, the clarinet player in the band, sat in the row in front of me, that had the softest cheeks and the bluest eyes and the most beautiful shiny hair. I thought about him for hours. And I listened to the soft sloughing of the wind through the cedar fronds, which continued to say, all is well in the world. I also looked across the yard at the big tree, which even here, 60 feet up in the air, was still 3 or 4 feet thick. Huge. I'd tried to climb up it a few times. No success. I didn't know how. But I wanted to climb it, and I told Dad I would. So there was a feeling of excitement. All was well in the world. Truly, it was a wonderful childhood. Until that fall, that October, when my father suddenly died of a heart attack. And now I spent even more time in the treehouse because I could somehow feel closer to my father up there his quiet, calm presence and his tree-loving self, somehow I felt closer to him when I was up in the tree. And that sound of the cedar in the wind continued to reassure me that all was still well in the world. Somehow Dad was not with us, but he was okay, part of this greater life that I felt all around me. But now, looking across at the big tree, I didn't feel excited. I felt shame because I hadn't climbed it, and I told Dad I would, and now he would never know. Truly, it was a feeling of pain in my heart when I looked at it. And the years went by, and I became more interested in friends and activities and spent less time in the treehouse. Providentially, in my first year of college, I had roommates, 2 Norwegian boys, blonde-headed Norwegian boys. I promptly fell in love with the younger one. And they were rock climbers, and they taught me the use of ropes. And so the first day of summer vacation, I came home, and I walked up into the backyard with a rope under my arm and excitement in my heart. By the use of a thread and a rock, I got the rope up over the first broken off branch stump, and I pulled myself up and pulled myself onto that broken off branch stump. And I stood there with my arms against the rough bark, my heart pounding, looking up in the next broken off branch stump, and I pulled myself up and stood on it. And before long, I was in the limbs and climbing. And I could almost hear the tree saying, "Welcome, Garth. I've been waiting for you. What took you so long?" And as I climbed higher, the views opened up. I could see across the Sammamish Slough down below, a slow-moving river in the distance. Across it, the hardware store where Dad and I always used to go to buy things, to fix stuff that had broken in the house. I could see all the people in the parking lot like little ants. The whole town, all the cars moving. And then as I climbed higher, my view came up over the nearby hill, and I could see the Cascade Mountains in the distance. They were still covered in snow now in June, or snow on the high peaks. As I climbed higher, I caught a glimpse of a Lake Washington, sparkling, and beyond it, the Olympic Mountains, already burnished with the colors of the late afternoon sun. And then I got to the top of the tree, and I could see to the south, Mount Rainier, like a huge presence, hovering there in the distance. I stayed up there for half an hour. It began to get darker. I began to think I better start climbing down. And then the back door opened. Mom came out. She had the bell in her hand. She clanged it a few times, as she always had, just for old time's sake. She put it down on the concrete. She cupped her hands around her mouth, and she called, "Garth, dinner time!" And I just couldn't help it. I should have spared her, but I called down, "I'm up here, Mom!" And she looked up and she scanned the trees as she always had. She said, "I don't see you. Where are you?" "Up here, Mom! Up here!" And she looked up, and when she caught sight of me at the top of the tree, she screamed. I climbed down. It took me a half an hour. Dinner was almost cold on the table by the time I came in, but no food had ever tasted better. And somehow Dad was with us there at the table. I could hear his voice. I could feel his hand on my shoulder. I could see the love in his eyes and the pride, because I'd climbed a big tree and seen the whole world for both of us. That's that. Yeah, there's always this unspoken rule about not clapping in church. It's fine. So that story was really a healing story for me, because I did carry that shame around for a long time. And even after this event occurred, but somehow telling the story and reliving this event it healed that inside of me until I felt it converted it into actually a great reconciliation and a sense of pride with my father. In my junior year of high school, I wrote an essay in which I claimed that trees had a lot more important things to say than most people, which I really believed, and I started spending more time in nature. I'm skipping classes, actually, to go walking in the woods, and I began to feel more deeply these presences around me. In my senior year, I left public school and I went to a little alternative school up in the mountains that was run by a yoga ashram, a yoga community. And there we lived in cabins that were heated by wood heat, lit by kerosene lamps, serviced by outhouses we dug for ourselves. And I never had a more joyous year in my whole life. Immersed in this great land all around me, river canyons to both sides, mountains in the distance, the sound of trees every night, and the blackness of the night, and the stars above. I went to college in spurts. I only lasted a year and then came back to the community and joined the monastery, and I went back to college, and I came back and joined the monastery again, and I went back to college. And at college I fell in love every time with some new boy, and in the monastery I had a friend that I was also totally in love with, and we had a great friendship. It was platonic, but very deep and wonderful, largely based in mountain adventures, skiing and hiking together, singing together. And in college, I always fell in love with straight boys, and so it was very painful. Indeed, very painful. And I discovered through these years another love that I cultivated as well, which was much more stable, much more long-term, much more dependable. And that was this love with a deeper life all around me, this presence of life that manifested through trees and through rivers. And that was a great solace to me and a great strength. And that brings me to a point in the talk that I'm really interested in sharing with you, which is the curious relationship I've found as I've contemplated it over these years between the experience of nature and the experience of romance and sex. I think, especially in modern lives, where we're sitting, many of us, at computers, driving in cars, living in air-conditioned and heated houses, we're very cut off, much more so than men have been in previous generations, from contact with the vital, sensuous world. So I think that probably sex has more strength and power for us than it did even for earlier generations of men. Because for us it's a contact with that which is primal, essential, instinctive, sensual, that connects us very directly beyond our brains and our concepts and our thoughts. It puts us directly in touch with these forces of life that move through us. And very exciting in that way. Nature, in the same way, contact with nature is also very sensual. And if you allow yourself to do more than sightsee, to look out the window of your car at the sunset, if you allow yourself to immerse yourself in nature, to go on hikes where you get wet and muddy, or climb a tree, or lean up against a tree, or camp out and get cold, to listen to the wind, feel the wind across you, it's very sensual. I love lying on wet grass. I love lying in the leaves. I love even shivering through a night because it puts me in the sensual contact. I love having my hand on rocks and on trees. I love granite under my feet and rock climbing because it is so sensual and it puts you in touch with this primal life that flows through everything, that's deeply, deeply life-giving. And it's almost as if, I'm going to read this thing I forgot to read. This is a passage from Forrest Carter from the book called The Education of Little Tree. When I first got to the cabin, he's a 8-year-old boy. He's been orphaned, and now he goes to live with his Cherokee grandparents. His grandfather is half Cherokee and half Scot, and he runs a whiskey still up in the back. And his dog was chasing off the revenuers. And Grandma is pureblood Cherokee. So he's talking in first person to this 8-year-old boy. When I first got to the cabin, when he first moved there after his parents were killed, when I first got to the cabin, Grandma right away set to work on a pair of moccasins for me. A few days later, they were ready. I put them on, and Grandpa and I set off up the high trail that forked off to the right and took to the side of the mountain, sloping always upward as it traveled along the hollow. I trotted behind Grandpa, and I could feel the upward slant of the trail. In North Carolina, where the story takes place, they speak in this beautiful, soft, very soft southern accent, so maybe I should continue in that. I trotted behind Grandpa and could feel the earth mother, come to me through my moccasins. I could feel her push and swell and sway and give here and there, and the roots that veined her body and the life and the water blood deep inside her. She was warm and springy, bounced me on her breast, as Grandma said she would. The cold air streamed my breath in clouds, and the spring branch fell far below us. bare tree branches dripped water from ice palms that through their soft light eased the darkness away. I love these lines. I trotted behind Grandpa and I could feel the upward slant of the trail, and I could feel something more, as Grandma said I would. Manala, the Earth Mother, came to me through my moccasins. I could feel her push and swell and sway and give here and there, and the roots that veined her body and the life and the water blood deep inside her. This is somehow just walking on the land, up through the moccasins came this. It comes inside of us. It's more than just seeing. It's more than just feeling. There's a presence that comes into us when we're on the land. And somehow this sensuality of contact with nature is greatly expansive, greatly life-giving, vitalizing, whereas oftentimes sexual sensuality can definitely be all of those things, but there's a tendency to become fixated in it, fixated in the human form, so that it ends up not being that life-giving. It ends up becoming entrapping. It ends up becoming life-draining. And I think probably all of us have felt. So as I've gotten older, I've drawn more and more and more on this deep sensuality and connection with the life that comes through nature, and even began to feel in recent years, as I still appreciate men enormously, and I'm always looking out for eye candy, but I begin to feel it much more, this beauty, this masculine beauty, much more as an expression of life, in the same way that the tree is or the flower is. There's something more than that person. There's some great force coming through it that blesses me through the beauty of the individual. It's more universal than individual. Time. Okay. So eventually I graduated from college and I went to live in the community. I was there for some years and I was not a model member. I didn't like going inside to meditate. I liked going out to the woods to meditate. But fortunately in my tradition, there was an appreciation for all of these things I've been talking about. And I thought just for a break in the talking, I would lead you in a chant that we used to sing that I've always loved. And in the chant is the word God, and that word is difficult for many people, and for me it means simply just this mysterious life that informs and flows through everything. So we'll sing it like 3 times through or so. I forgot to practice, so I'm probably going to blow them. Darn it. Sing it 3 times through, and feel free to just listen or to sing along. Oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful. This is too high. Oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful. In the forest thou art green, in the forest thou art green, in the mountains thou art high. In the mountains thou art high, in the river thou art restless, in the river thou art restless, in the ocean thou art great, in the ocean thou art great. Oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful. At thy feet, oh, I do bow. At thy feet, oh, I do bow. Oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful. Oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful. In the forest thou art green. In the forest thou art green. In the mountains thou art high. In the mountains thou art high. In the river thou art restless. In the river thou art restless. In the ocean thou art great. In the ocean thou art great. Oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful. Oh God, beautiful, oh God, beautiful. At thy feet, oh want to do a brief passage from John Muir, who it was one of the great nature mystics. And someone said recently they think that Muir really founded a new religion because he popularized this idea of wilderness or wild land, wildness being sacred. And some of you may have seen the wonderful series on the national parks, Ken Burns' program here recently. But Muir popularized this idea that wilderness was somehow sacred, and that led to the national parks, and it led to a great conservation movement in this country. And he founded the Sierra Club. So in a sense, he did start a new religion. Of course, these ideas had been around for a long time, but he popularized them more and brought them into a parlance which people could really tune into. So here's a beautiful passage from Muir. It said, "Sitting in a high place one morning, watching the world come alive, peak after glorious peak bathed in that rare Sierra light, I begin to feel as if the rising sun shone not on me, but in me, as if the river flowed not past, but through me, swelling, vibrating, tingling, every fiber and cell of my body, making it glide and sing. And indeed, the trees grow and the flowers bloom in our bodies as well as our souls, and every bird song and wind song and storm song of the rocks and the heart of the mountains is our song and sings our love. Everything is flowing, going somewhere. No part or particle is ever wasted or worn out, but eternally flows from use to use, from beauty to greater beauty. Everything flowing, not just the rivers and streams carrying rocks to the sea, but the snow flows fast or slow in avalanches or great beauty-making glaciers, while the air in magnificent floods flows up the canyons and over the hills, carrying plant parts, seeds, pollen, and spores, and streams of melody and streams of music, while the stars stream through space, pulsed on and on forever through nature's warm heart. So Muir is just a glorious, this vision that he had. To me, there's another passage in Muir that contrasts so hugely with that. He says, I don't have it in my brain, I'll have to read it if I have it here. He says, somewhere here. Maybe I don't have it. I thought I did. Well, I'll paraphrase it then. He says, most people live on this world but not in it, with no conscious sympathy or relationship to anything around them. Rigid like marbles, touching but separate. Rigid like marbles, touching but separate. It's a tragedy, really. It's a tragedy. And it's probably the greatest curse of our time, of modern times, is this sense of isolation that individuals feel. And so what I'm proposing is that, yes, human beings and human contact and community, as we share here this morning, is vitally important. But sometimes we don't have that. Sometimes it's not easily at hand, whereas nature is almost always easily at hand, even if it's just the sky outside or the tree in your backyard. If you can begin to feel this great connectedness that was expressed through this quote that I just gave of Muir. His vision was so vast that he could feel, the air sweeping up the valleys, feel the stars pulsing through space. That everything is part and particle of your very own being. So try to pick out any one thing by itself, and you find that it's hitched to everything else in the universe. And in that same way, we are hitched to everything else in the universe. So we have a very short time left. So I want to move into the experiential part. Winston Churchill was once asked to give a talk, and he was asked how long it would take him to prepare. And he said, well, if you want me to talk an hour, I can do it tomorrow. But if you want me to talk for 5 minutes, I'll need a couple of weeks to prepare. And I feel that way here today, too. There's so much I would love to share with you, and the time is so short. I'm trying to condense a lot of this. So what I'd like you to do is just take about 30 seconds and close your eyes and remember a time in your life. It could be from your early childhood or your youth, or it could be last week, or somewhere in between, when you were in a place that touched you, that moved you, where some presences in nature affected you. So some place that's special to you, that you recall from your life. And just try to visualize that place in a strong way. Okay, and now just turn to someone beside you and share with them. Each of you have 1.5 minutes. So just share with them, tell them about that place, and whatever story goes along with it.
Thank you, Lassiter.
Great. Afterwards, we can share a little bit about what that was like for you. But I'd like right now, while this is still fresh, to close your eyes. And this is a bit odd what I'm going to ask you to do, but you'll see it has a real power to it. I'd like you to just in a subtle way think of this place and move your body. So if there's a movement that can be associated with this place, it might be the movement of water, or the movement of the trees. It might simply be the feeling of the place, or it might be your own body as you recall yourself moving through this landscape. But in some way, subtly move, and you'll find that the movement helps to reconnect you in an even more profound way with the experience of that place. You can just move your trunk, or you can move your head, you can move your arms, or all of it subtly, or a little bit more, whatever's comfortable to you. It's some movement. Okay. So I'll be interested to hear later what that experience was like for you. I'd like to invite you in this week to come to be more engaged with the nature that's around you. Our society conspires to shut our senses down, conspires to remove us from our connectedness with the land and with nature. So try to re-energize your senses, to listen more carefully as you pass something that's interesting to you, to stop and look at it carefully. Don't be afraid to smell leaves, to stick your nose into the cracks of bark and smell the tree. Every tree has its own smell. Mm-hmm. Every tree has its own smell. It's just wonderful. Crush leaves. And we also have a great prejudice, especially in America, the land of the bigger and the better, against the small. So as I say, you have to go see a sequoia to really be impressed. Don't be afraid to be impressed by the small, by the tiny, to overcome that prejudice against the small, to look at tiny things, to really look at them carefully. Scale is nothing, really. You know, the stars are moving through space, while within a single cell of your body, hundreds of reactions are taking place. and in the DNA itself. You know, if you took the DNA from a single cell in your body and stretched it out, uncoiled it, it's 3 feet long. Think of the complexity that's there on that incredible microscopic level. So in that context, a pod from a eucalyptus tree is enormous, vast. So climb the mountain of the eucalyptus pod in your mind. Use your imagination, climb the mountain of those grooves and ridges, and feel yourself going over the terrain of the eucalyptus pod or the leaf or whatever. Use your imagination. Become active in your interaction with nature. So I'm going to finish with reading a couple of passages from Walt Whitman, who's been one of my gurus for a long time. I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars, and the pismire is equally perfect, and a grain of sand, and the egg of the wren. And the tree toad is I've never known how to pronounce this, chef d'oeuvre. Maybe some of you speak French. Do you know how that's said? Chef d'oeuvre? Okay. All right. Of the highest. And the running blackberry would adorn the parlors of heaven, and the narrowest hinge in my hand puts to scorn all machinery, and the cow crunching grass with depressed head surpasses any statue. And this line has become famous. And a mouse is miracle enough to stagger sextillions of infidels. Space and time, now I see it as true what I guessed at, what I guessed when I loafed on the grass, what I guessed while I lay alone in my bed, and again as I walked on the beach under the paling stars of the morning. My ties and ballots, they leave me. My elbows rest in sea gaps. I skirt sierras. My palms cover continents. I'm afoot with my vision. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness.
We have about 4 minutes, so maybe we have time for one comment or question. Anyone? Will you be available, Garth, to talk with people?
Certainly, yeah.
I don't remember much of your introduction that Ray gave you. Can you tell me a little bit more about you are involved in an organization that introduces people to wilderness?
Yeah, I'm not involved in any organization other than myself. I've worked for various organizations over the years. I worked with the Yosemite Institute for many years, and in the 80s I worked a great deal with an organization called Earth Sky, which was environmental education. So I led gazillions of workshops for teachers and parents and park staff people in how to lead environmental experiences that would put people in touch in a deeper way with nature. Mm-hmm. Experiential. A lot of environmental education in the 60s and the 70s was sort of point and talk, give information about things. So it was the scientific approach. The more information you knew, the more you knew about nature. And in the early 80s, a whole new breakthrough took place where there was the understanding that knowing about nature was not good enough. You had to experience nature, you had to know it. So a whole new generation of techniques and methods and processes emerged. And I worked closely with Joseph Cornell, who founded Earth Sky, who wrote a book called Sharing Nature with Children, and then later another book for adults, which was all about this coming into close contact on an experiential level with nature. And then more recently, I've been an environmental storyteller, just my own small one-person organization, just telling stories all over the place.
Do you have any CDs of that?
I do. You know, I've got them. I forgot to even bring them in. I've got CDs in the car. I'll bring them in right after we close. I have one that's the whole life story of John Muir, which I perform first person and with a Scottish accent, and and then another one which is stories of Muir's animal adventures. Which the main piece on there is this extraordinary story of an adventure he had on an Alaskan glacier with this dog, and it's a very powerful piece of writing actually. And then the third one is called Journeys Home, Stories of Nature's Great Circles. And that's more for children. That one is more for children. But it's great for grown-ups too, who are still childlike at heart.
I just really have enjoyed, I've had a love of nature for a long time. I used to do a lot of backpacking when I was younger. And I really love your combining nature and spirituality in a very gay-friendly way. And it's very rare to get all three of those elements together.
That's great. That's great. Thanks.
Do we have a host?
You know what? If nobody else is going to ask a question, since I want to pick up on his comment and read this wonderful passage that everybody will love. This is called When I Heard at the Close of Day. It's only 30 seconds long. When I heard at the close of day how my name had been received with plaudits in the capital, still it was not a happy night for me. And else, when I caroused, or when my plans were accomplished, still I was not happy. But the day when I rose at dawn from the bed of perfect health, refreshed, singing and hailing the right breath of autumn, when I saw the full moon in the west grow pale and disappear in the morning light, when I wandered alone over the beach and undressing, bathed, laughing with the cool waters, and saw the sunrise, and when I thought how my dear friend, my lover, was on his way coming, then I was happy. Oh, then each breath tasted sweeter, and all that day my food nourished me, and the beautiful day passed well, and the next came with equal joy, and with the next at evening came my friend. And that night, while all was still, I heard the waters roll slowly, continuously upon the shores. I heard the hissing rustle of the liquid in the sands as directed to me, whispering to congratulate me. For the one I loved most lay sleeping by me, under the same cover in the cool night. In the stillness and the autumn moonbeams, his face was inclined toward me, and his arm lay lightly around my breast. And that night, I was happy. There you've got them all combined.
Thank you so much. I'm the host for today. So there's turkeys and there's hopefully hot water. Started out, I think, right? If you get some tea, would you be so kind as to wash it out? I will be circulating the design bowl. We're hoping that you have such a generous feeling today. Our wonderful talk. And so the suggested donation between $5 and $8. Is it $8.50 now? $8 anyway, feel free to offer what you can. There may, if it so accumulates, there may be a group of people outside going to lunch together afterwards. There's a sign-up sheet for those who wish to get on our mailing list, and also another sign-up sheet is that way where people can have, if they want to have their names listed for other people to contact, that's a separate list.
It's the same list, but you just check directly.
I haven't used it for a while. And what did I leave out, Kai?
You got everything.
Great. It's the first time we've ever done that. Good.
Any other announcements?
I have a free ticket for the performance artist Tim Miller for this coming Saturday night.
I was just talking about it outside.
Right place at the right time.
Thank you, Ray. Garth, my goodness, thank you so much for your presence with us this day, and what a gift you've given us. And as you were talking, I realized, when I get into nature, I get really horny. And, I immediately want to either have sex or take off my clothes. And I realize now I don't have to have therapy to deal with that issue. Great, thank you for that gift. Our speaker next week will be Robert Hopke, a Jungian therapist, a national best-selling author, and on synchronicity, that there are no accidents. And we look forward to his presentation next week.
Yes, I'm Kay, and there will be an annual Thanksgiving public for GBS. Again, on Thanksgiving Day this year, and it will be held at my place in East Bay. So those of you who are interested, there are flyers out there, the yellow sheet, so pick one up, and if you're interested in coming, please let me know, if possible, because we like to coordinate dishes. So thank you very much.
And if anybody's with a car who's going over from San Francisco to his house, I and a few other people would appreciate a lift, if that's possible.
Any other announcements before we close? Okay, let's stand and join him. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.